just started recording, as I said. I didn't have enough time to actually create a histogram yesterday. I did a mini video and posted it. But I do want to go through this because I know not everybody watches my mini videos. Maybe no one watched it. I don't know. Did anybody watch the 7-minute video I made yesterday? Yay! It was worthwhile if one of you watched it. That's good. All right. So right now, Eden, I know you were in the restroom. So this is where we're starting. 12-2 Part 2 notes. Create a histogram. You don't have to. We're going to use this frequency table, but I told them they don't have to write that. We're going to use it. That's okay. So title of histogram has to have a title. You have to title what's this number on the side. This is the frequency part. How many? Yeah, I want you to write number of states here, voter participation by state. That's what the histogram represents. So we're saying that there's we're telling how many states have this percentage of people voting, right? So you look up there, 35 to 39, one tally mark, the frequency is 1. So only one state had a voting percentage that fell between 35 and 39. We don't know what that value was, but we know there was one between 35 and 39, or including 35 to 39. Okay. So we should have a title, we should have what we call an x-axis and a y-axis, and now we're going to put our intervals in there, and that's too little. I'm going to see if I can use my thing and just create, enlarging the font. Enlarge the font. Enlarging, I don't think is the word. Maybe it is. I don't know. Is it? You may be right. All right. So 35 to 39. Actually, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to make. Yeah, you've got to put the intervals on. Okay, I'm about to try to enlarge it. All right, so let's do best fit. 160. How's that? A little better?
A little bit.
Okay, so the intervals that were in that table are now down here. 35 to 39, 40 to 44, 45 to 49, 50 to 54, 55 to 59, 69 to 64, and 65 to 69%. So we know now that the percentage of voting in the states that they're talking about range from 35% up to possibly 69%, somewhere within that range. All right, so we have to go back up to our frequency table to see that in the 35 to 39, well, let's look at our frequency table up here. So this goes from 0 to 16. So now my frequency, I'm not going to put 16 marks here. So I'm going to go up maybe by, I'm going to go up by 2s. I'm going to go up by 2s. So I'll show you how to do that. So it's all the way up to 12. Let's go by 2s. So we're going to say this is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and 14. This one here should be up like that. Okay? So our first group, our first interval, has one state in it. So we don't put a number 1 there. What we do is we create a bar. So we're going to go up, the interval is up to 2, or the frequency is up to 2, so we're going to do half of that. And then we're going to color that in. We're going to go up to 40 to 44. 40 to 44 is 0, so we're not going to put a bar there. The next one, its frequency, 45 to 45, its frequency is 6. Yep, so now we're going to go here to, oh, I lied. We got to make this bar bigger. I'm just going to extend it there and color it in. Because our bars have to touch here if there's anything there to touch. Right. So that's going to be a 0, but now our next bar is going to be this wide, and it's going to be 6. So 6 over here. So that is the width of my bar. Goes up to the height of frequency 6, and we're going to color it in. My next bar is going to go from here to here, and that's 50 to 54. So that frequency is 12, right? So we're going to go down here, and now this bar has to go all the way up to 12. So this bar goes up at even with 12, and we're going to draw our bar and then color it in. We can't leave spaces in between our bars unless they have a bar that's 0. That's the difference between a bar chart and a histogram. Bar charts, the bars don't touch. Histograms, they do. I'm sure there's other differences. There's a use for one that's not appropriate for the other, or not as appropriate for the other. Can't clear my throat. Allergies get me. The next group, 55 to 59, is at 13. So since we did ours in increments of 2, 13 is going to be right smack dab in the middle of 12 and 14. So my bar is going to go up to there. Right? Doesn't have to be exact. It's pretty obvious that's approximately in the middle. So I'm going to create my new bar, and then I'm going to color it in. You should see, well, you don't even have to be able to see the bar in between, because here you can see the width of the bar, right? So how tall is my next one going to be? How tall is this one going to be? 12, right? So you're going to go down, 60 to 64. There are 12 states that had a percentage of voters between 60 and 64%. So 12 is here, lines up with that line, creating our bar, then we're going to color it in. And the last group, between 65 and 69% voting, how many states had that percentage of voting? Arrange that, 6.
So that's the same as 45 and 45.
It is. Good job. So now we have created histograms. And the way we read this, sometimes the most important part about the histogram, though, is that you can read one. Probably on the EOC you're not going to have to create one. They might ask you some examples about, which of these represents, is a histogram. We would not consider it a valid histogram if the intervals weren't even. So just like when you're creating a frequency table, really when you create a frequency table, you're creating it in order to create these kind of visual representations, graphs, histograms, dot plots, box and whisker plots. We're using frequency tables to create these other kinds of visual representations. So when you do that, we always want to have this even intervals, the same number of values in each interval, right? So if I had not created this and I did not see the frequency table, I could say, oh, voter participation by state, this is the number of states. I can see that there was one state, because this goes up between 0 and 2 halfway, that's one state that had a voter percentage of between 35 and 39%. I said, no state had a voter percentage of between 40 and 44%. And you can do that with all of them. Oh, what was the highest, which percentage of voting had the highest frequency? Oh, 55 to 59. Which had the lowest? 40 to 44, because it was 0, right? So if there's a blank there, then it has to be 0. Does that make sense? All right, so we're probably going to do another one of these in a minute, but we're going to move on. I want to make sure. Okay, so the only other new thing is a cumulative frequency table. So we're going to review, this is an easy points to get right here. Remember, there's 3 kinds of ways to describe a histogram: uniform, skewed, or symmetrical. Right. Uniform, skewed, or symmetrical. So, uniform, you notice that these words aren't exactly the same, but you have to be approximately the same. Even though they're not exactly the same, we would still say that that set of data is uniform. When we describe the histogram, we're actually describing the set of data that it represents. Okay? So, if your histogram looks like that, then that set of data is uniform. If your histogram looks like this, even though it's not exactly symmetrical, because this one is a little taller than this one, it's approximate, right? Because it's data, in theory, is real world data. It's not going to be exactly anything. But we would say that this set of data is symmetrical. And this one, because we have several shoulders here and one here, we would say that this one is skewed. This set of data is skewed. It's not obvious which way. I would say it's skewed to the left, but it's not really obvious. That tail is kind of weird. Right, so this one might be. But this is definitely skewed. When it obviously had what we call the tail yesterday, kind of imagine it was getting long and skinny on one side. Yeah. It's skewed in whichever direction that tail is on. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is make a frequency table. A cumulative frequency table, so that's what you're titling this one. You don't want to go problem 4, just making a cumulative frequency table. Making a cumulative frequency table is just adding one more column to a frequency table. We are going to have intervals, we're going to have tallies, we're going to have frequency, and then we're going to have a cumulative frequency column.
Yeah.
So this set of data, I do want you to go ahead and write this set of data.
Yeah.
So you can just title it data, and then list these numbers. You know, you can put commas in between there. You can put commas if you want, or just leave a space.
You can make a little bit.
Yeah, I'll go back.
Long, can't even see. All right.
So really, all we're doing is making a frequency table, and then we're adding that column. It's literally the exact same thing. Does anybody know what the word cumulative means? Something like a lot of it. So if it's cumulative, that means it keeps adding up to right? Have you ever heard of cumulative rainfall? When it popped into my head over a period of time. If it rains over 5 days, it rains 1 inch one day, 2 inches the next, 1 inch the next day. The cumulative rainfall includes 4 inches, right? So it just adds up, and that's what we're going to do here. We are going to add up our frequency column. We did a frequency table, but not a cumulative. There's only 3, right? So, yes, very similar, Aiden. You're exactly right. Very similar. I'm glad you realized that. Normally, your data is going to have a title. This set of data doesn't have a title, so I just wrote the word title. All right? Normally, so then we're going to have 4 columns. So if you have not sketched the 4 columns, go ahead and sketch the 4 columns. That first column is going to be an interval. If I knew what the data was, I would name my interval column minutes read or something like that. Are you following good? The next column is going to be where I put my tally marks. If they give us a list of data, I got to make my own tally marks, right, and put them in the intervals. My next column is going to be frequency. I abbreviated that, FREQ. And my last column is our new column. And that's the cumulative frequency, CUM-FREQ. CUM is going to stand for cumulative.
What's the second one?
Tally. You want to move up, Steve? Move in front of this house.
Yeah, this.
All right, so we've created our chart. Now we need to fill it in, our table. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to count how many members are in my set of data. How many pieces of data do I have? You should have it on your paper. It's much easier to count this.
We count 2 on the right.
12 is 1, 13 is 1, 15 is 1. Right, so you're counting numbers. I got 16, so let's see if you got 16. Do you have 16 of the numbers written on your paper? You should have 16 numbers written on your paper.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there's 16. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. You have 16 numbers written. All right. So now, here's where we have to actually make our interval. So, I told you one way to do it yesterday. I'm trying to make it easy for you to do. You can make your intervals any way you want, as long as you make them the same number of values in each interval. Now, that being said, I told you yesterday I want somewhere between 3 and 5. Can't have less than 3, and prefer you not have more than 5. Sometimes they're going to tell you what to make your interval, right? How many values to put in an interval. Now, it's a nice homework. There's one that does that. It tells you to create your frequency table or your histogram with one of the 2 of them with intervals of 2. That means you have to have 2 units in each interval. But here, I'm going to use the range. So one way to do it, this is part of similar to the way I talked to you about doing yesterday. We're going to find the range, and that's 15 minus 0, because 15 is the greatest number in the set of data, and 0 is the smallest. And then I'm going to just divide that by 4. If I divide that by 4, sometimes I'm going to have 4, sometimes I'm going to have 5. Dividing by 4 is usually the way we want to go for the set of data that we work with. So that's what I'm going to do. We're going to divide by 4. And instead of adding 1 here, we could. We could have added 1 there and then divided by 4. That part, it doesn't matter. We don't want a decimal interval. Not if there's not a decimal in our data. Right? If we have a decimal in our data, then our intervals are going to have decimals. All right, so here I rounded up from 3.75 to 4. So now I'm going to put intervals of, each interval will have 4 values in it. So if that doesn't make sense yet, I'm going to show you the first interval. So the smallest number is 0, so I have to include 0, and that's going to be what we're going to start with. So I number, 2 is a number, and 3 is a number. There are 4 values in that interval, so that's what we're going to do. There are no decimals in my data values, I'm not going to have decimals in my interval. I'm going to start with 4. No, let's finish this first. Are you watching that? 4 minutes or less, Amara, use your phone. Alright, so this is going to start with 8 and go to what? Yes. 8, 9, 10, 11. If you have to count on your fingers, count on your fingers. 12, 13, 14, 15. So 12 to 15. It is 129. And we can stop there because 15 is our highest number. If our highest interval was 16 or 18 or whatever, we have to go up more, right? But since our highest one is 15, that's as far as we have to go. Does that make sense? Alright, so now I'm going to start tallying. So, and I'm going to mark them off as I go. 12 is going to go in the last interval. 13 is going to go in there as well. 15 also is between 12 and 15. 1 goes in the first one. You don't have to wait for me if you know how to do it. 5 falls in between 4 and 7. 7 also goes in that same interval. Make sure you're crossing them out though. And when we count them up, we should have 16 tally marks in here because we have 16 values. Ooh, I didn't put 10 in there. 9. 2, another 2, 7, 11, 2, 1, we're at 5 on tally, you cross it through, so now we know that's 5, 0 goes in that same interval, and 15 goes in the last one. So now we're going to do one interval at a time. Here's what we're going to do. So this is where we're going to learn about the cumulative frequency. So the frequency of this interval is the number of tally marks. So it's 6, right? So we're going to take this column and add it to the previous column. But there is no previous column. So our cumulative frequency is the same as our frequency in the first row. I did. Thank you. Let's make sure, well, let's count our tallies, make sure I got them all there. 6, 9, 12, 16. Yep, I think I got them all right. Now, how many are in this interval? 3. So 3 goes here, but now we add these two together, and now it's cumulative. We're adding those up. That's what the cumulative means. Kind of stacks on top of one another, right? Well, not the 6 wouldn't because it didn't have anything to add it to. It's always added to the previous interval. There's not an interval before that, right? So for this first one, the frequency and cumulative frequency are always going to be the same. How many are in this group? 3. What's our cumulative frequency going to be? 9 plus 3, right? 9. So here, 6 plus 3 gave us 9. Here, 9 plus 3. Yes, 12. And the last group, last interval has 4 in it. 12 plus 4 is 16. So our cumulative frequency should also always be the same as the number of pieces of data. And that's it. That's the cumulative frequency table. Good stuff. Any questions? Alright, let's look at this because we did not do an example of this. This is where we're just reading the histogram. I need you guys to watch up here with me. Okay, so can we all recognize this as a histogram? Okay, so Aiden, honey, that's not talking about you, you're talking to you're distracting KBI and you're not focusing. So the histogram below shows the amount of money that 100 shoppers spent on groceries this week. So, looking here, money spent on groceries. What does this number represent?
How much money?
Mm.
Oh, no.
That's how much grocery they want.
That's the amount of people.
That's the amount of people.
Yeah.
This is the number of people, and that's something that you have to know. This is the money they spent.
Yeah.
So this is the money spent, right? And you don't have to write this, we're just watching this now, so not great for taking notes on, but not super hard either. Because this graph, even if they didn't tell us that, if they didn't give us this little description, they probably would have put number of shoppers here, all right? It says, which interval represents the greatest number of shoppers? How do we know which one's the greatest?
At the top.
It's the tallest one, right?
26 to 175.
Yes, and how many shoppers spent between $126 and $175? 45, that's right. So the interval is 126 to 175. How many shoppers spent more than 175? So this one takes some thought to think about it before you answer me. Chappelle?
20.
How'd you get 20?
One split, 76, 225.
Mm-hmm.
That's 15 right there.
Yeah, so that is up to the 15, so that's 15.
Yeah, 226, 275, 5.
Yeah, that's even with the 5. So we're adding those two bars together,
Yeah.
right? So now, how many shoppers spent more than 175? Just like the Paul said, 20 shoppers. How many shoppers spent less than $126?
35.
Okay, so 126 to 175 is this interval. So anything less than that? So how many is in this bar? 25 shoppers. How many is in this bar? 10 shoppers. So 35 shoppers spent less than $126. Is there anything else that looks different on here?
Nah, they all look the same.
Except, let's look at, so number 11, you have to use intervals of 2 and there's decimals in that. So, I'm going to give you the first interval. I'm going to cheat for you a little bit, but you have to work it out from there, all right? So for number 11, on your homework, the first interval is not, there's a couple ways you could do it, but I would do it for my first interval, 0 to 1.99. That's 2, right? 2 whole, between 0 and 1.99. So what would your next interval be?
So it'll be 2
Mm-hmm.
and
So once you pick your first interval, you can just add that to this number.
What's the number 1?
So this would be 2, 2, and add 2, right?
What's the number 1?
11. All right? It's an interval of 2. It's going to have 2 in it. So 1.99 plus 2.
3.99?
Yes.
It's 2
2 to 3.99. You're going to do that until you include all of your data values.
so it's 2 to
Also, we gotta include all the numbers.
yeah.
So the smallest number is what?
It's 0.5.
0.5, and the largest number is what?
10.5.
No, I think it's 12, isn't it?
I don't see no 12. Oh, yeah.
So it's got you're gonna do enough groups that you include 12. It's gonna include your smallest and your biggest. Alright? I think that's all I was gonna do. You see anything else on there, Jacob? You see anything else on our worksheet that we haven't talked about, something that looks like it? I think I got to cover everything today. So 1 is a frequency table, and number 9 is a cumulative frequency table. So you have to have an extra column on the cumulative frequency table. Everybody clear on that?
Which one?
1 is a regular frequency table, 9 is a cumulative frequency table. If you need help making your intervals, come see me and I will help you make intervals.